powerful names appear in controversial files, should mention alone be mistaken for guilt? If a man like Jeffrey Epstein built relationships with politicians, billionaires, royalty, and global influencers, should we be shocked that his contact list stretch across the highest levels of power? And thus appearing in an email, a fight and flight log, or a database automatically mean complicity in crime? Or does it simply reflect proximity to influence? Well, today, question dominates the political landscape in Washington as lawmakers clash over the handling of the Epstein files, transparency, redactions, and the mention of President Donald Trump's name within the broader archive. But in the court of public opinion, the deeper question remains: where does association end and evidence begin? Across the Atlantic, another question unfolding on the Olympic stage is when an athlete wears remembrance on his helmet in the middle of war. Is it political defiance or human dignity? And who decides where expression ends and regulation begins? In the Middle East, diplomacy hangs in the balance as President Trump restarts nuclear talks with Iran. Can dialogue restrain a long-standing adversary, or will it deepen regional anxiety, particularly for Israel? And in Asia, as Taiwan's president warns that his island may not be Beijing's final target, the world must confront a pressing uncertainty. That is, if deterrence fails in one corner of the Indo-Pacific, what message does that send to the rest of the region? Welcome to the Flash News. I am Star Smart, and these are the questions shaping today's global headlines. Let's dive in right after the break. In a tense and combative hearing on Capitol Hill, the United States Attorney General Pam Bondi faced bipartisan criticism from lawmakers who accused the Department of Justice of mishandling and obscuring key documents related to the Jeffrey Epstein case. Democratic and some Republican members of House Judiciary Committee pressed Bondi over extensive redactions in the released files, the removal of sensitive material to protect victim identities, and the department's perceived lack of transparency and accountability, a controversy that has ignited political debate in Washington. Well, lawmakers have spotlighted the sheer volume of newly released material. Over 3 million pages made public under the Epstein Files Transparency Act that includes communications involving wealthy and powerful individuals. Some representatives on the committee identified previously redacted names now unmasked by Congress. And while critics argue that too many files still remain under redaction or out of public reach, among the most politically charged aspects of the hearings were repeated mentions of President Donald Trump in the Epstein files. Multiple news outlets and document summaries show thousands of references to Trump and related subjects in the DOJ database, including past communications or tips mentioning him in connection with Epstein's social circle. But then let's take a look at this video when Epstein was asked about Donald Trump.
Have you ever had a personal relationship with Donald Trump?
What do you mean by personal relationships?
Have you socialized with him?
Yes, sir.
Yes?
Yes, sir.
Have you ever socialized with Donald Trump in the presence of females under the age of 18?
Though I'd like to answer that question, at least today, I'm going to have to assert my 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment rights, sir.
Well, government officials have clarified that these mentions do not constitute evidence of criminal conduct. And the Justice Department has stated it found no credible information to justify an investigation of President Donald Trump over the Epstein ties. But for a financier like Jeffrey Epstein, a man who cultivated relationships with politicians, royalty, academics, and billionaires across continents, should the public be shocked to see numerous global figures mentioned in his circle, or does appearing in emails, flight logs, or contact books automatically translate into participation in criminal activity? That is one question we're asking. And then we wonder if it also simply reflects the reality that Epstein deliberately embedded himself within elite networks to build influence and legitimacy. Well, these are the questions lawmakers, investigators, and the public continue to grapple with as scrutiny intensifies. President Donald Trump himself has maintained that he never visited Epstein's private Caribbean island, a claim he repeatedly made publicly, and that he held no complicity in Epstein's crimes.
For years, I wouldn't talk to Jeffrey Epstein. I wouldn't talk because he did something that was inappropriate. He hired help. And I said, don't ever do that again. He stole people that work for me. I said, don't ever do that again. He did it again. And I threw him out of the place, persona non grata. I threw him out, and that was it. I'm glad I did, if you want to know the truth. And by the way, I never went to the island, and Bill Clinton went there supposedly 28 times. I never went to the island, but Larry Summers, I hear, went there. He was the head of Harvard. And many other people that are very big people. Nobody ever talks about them. I never had the privilege of going to his island. And I did turn it down, but a lot of people in Palm Beach were invited to his island. In one of my very good moments, I turned it down. I didn't want to go to his island. Yeah.
In fact, FBI documents released as part of the manuscript show a 2006 phone call in which President Donald Trump urged law enforcement to act against Epstein and described his associate Ghislaine Maxwell as evil. Well, let's take a look at this interview on PBS podcast.
That point, Epstein's legal problems began. The police began to investigate him over allegations that he was, that there were underage women coming to his house. Epstein believed that it was Trump who first informed the police about what was going on at Epstein's house. And from that point on, they were nothing but bitter enemies.
And this is what he's telling you. This is one of the instances of what he's telling you. That,
yes.
That
so,
the following
yes,
that happened.
That is the version of this related by Epstein.
Well, we see supporters of Bondi and the Department of Justice's approach say the department must balance transparency with legal obligations to protect victims' privacy. Critics counter that ongoing reductions and delays in making the full records available hinder public trust and may shield powerful figures from scrutiny. The political fallout from these hearings is likely to continue shaping public perception of both the Epstein case and the broader justice processes surrounding high-profile investigations. Well, we get more details on the Epstein case, but for now we see in Ukraine. Ukrainian skeleton pilot Vladislav Heraskevich has been disqualified from competing at the 2026 Winter Olympics in Milan Cortina after defying the International Olympic Committee's athlete expression rules. The IOC, supported by the International Bobsleigh and Skeleton Federation, ruled that Heraskevich custom helmet, which displayed images of more than 20 Ukrainian athletes and children who were killed in his country's war with Russia. It violated strict guidelines that bar political or memorial expressions on the field of play. Now, despite repeated attempts to negotiate a compromise, including offers for officials to allow Herashkevich to wear a plain black armband instead, the 27-year-old insisted on competing with his helmet of remembrance. And when he refused to remove or replace the helmet prior to competition, the IOC withdrew his accreditation and barred him from racing. Herashkevich took to social media writing, "This is the price of our dignity," alongside a photo of his helmet, a poignant acknowledgement of the symbolic significance he attached to his tribute. Ukrainian officials, including President Volodymyr Zelensky, publicly backed his decision, framing it as a powerful commemoration of those who have lost their lives amid Russia's full-scale invasion. The incident has reignited debate worldwide about the role of political expression and remembrance in international sport. While the IOC maintains that its rules are designed to keep competition focused on athletics rather than political messaging, critics have argued that memorializing fallen athletes transcends politics and that the enforcement of such rules has been inconsistent. But then supporters of Herashkevich see the episode as highlighting broader tensions between institutional neutrality and athletes' right to express solidarity and grief during a time of war. Well, over to Israel, we see Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who met with the United States President Donald Trump in Washington. Well, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with President Donald Trump in Washington in a hastily arranged diplomatic session focused on renewed negotiations with Iran over its nuclear program.
On this trip, we will discuss a number of issues, Gaza, the region, but of course, first and foremost, the negotiations with Iran. I will present to the President our ideas about the principles in the negotiation.
Well, the meeting, which was characterized as constructive yet exploratory, reflects a shift in Washington's approach to Tehran, with the Trump administration emphasizing continued diplomatic engagement. Well, here is J.D. Vance reemphasizing the Trump administration's stance.
Well, look, the president's told his entire senior team that we should be trying to cut a deal that ensures the Iranians don't have a nuclear weapon. But if we can't cut that deal, then there's another option on the table. So I think the president's going to continue to preserve his options. He's going to have a lot of options because we have the most powerful military in the world. But until the president tells us to stop, we're going to engage in these conversations and try to reach a good outcome through negotiation.
Would you like to see regime change in Iran? And what would, if the regime falls, what comes next?
Well, look, I mean, if the Iranian people want to overthrow the regime, that's up to the Iranian people. What we're focused on right now is the fact that Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. That's been the focus of the president's policy, even going back to the first administration.
President Trump stated following the session that he insisted on persisting with negotiations, acknowledging that while no concrete agreement was reached, both leaders agreed to maintain close coordination. The discussions also touched on regional security concerns, including development in Gaza and broader Middle East stability. Now, we see Netanyahu, while committed to countering Tehran's nuclear ambition, it has expressed unease about the United States' motives as diplomatic channels with Iran reopen. Israel, historically wary of any concessions that might empower Tehran, is pushing for assurances that a renewed dialogue will include stringent safeguards and limits on Iran's enrichment activities. President Trump, on the other hand, has expressed concerns about Iran keeping to its words.
I'd rather make a deal. It's got to be a good deal. No nuclear weapons, no missiles, no this, no that, all the different things that you want. But some people worry that they've been very dishonest with us over the years. I'd rather make a deal. It's got to be a good deal. No nuclear weapons, no missiles, no this, no that, all the different things that you want. But some people worry that they've been very dishonest with us over the years.
Well, the meeting underscores ongoing tensions between the United States' diplomatic strategy and Israeli security prerogatives, even as both allies weigh how best to manage Iran's nuclear ambitions without escalating conflict. Or continued high-level engagement signals that Tehran's nuclear dossier remains a linchpin of the United States' Middle East diplomacy in 2026. And on the final report, we see Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te has issued a stark warning that China could turn its attention to other regional nations should Beijing succeed in seizing the democratic island. Addressing reporters and lawmakers, Lai stressed that Taiwan's defense and security are not just matters of local sovereignty, but have broader implications for peace and stability across the Indo-Pacific. Lai has also urged Taiwan's opposition-controlled legislature to approve a $40 billion supplemental defense budget aimed at bolstering the island's military preparedness against increasing coercion from Beijing. The proposed budget would fund weapons and defense systems, mainly sourced from the United States, and reflects Taipei's deepening security partnership with Washington amid growing regional tensions. Beijing has repeatedly criticized the United States' arms sales to Taiwan, warning against what it frames as interference in China's internal affairs. Yet Lai insists that Taiwan's defense buildup is a necessary deterrent, not a provocation, and says the United States' support is both reliable and consistent with shared democratic interests in the region. The debate in Parliament over the defense budget highlights internal political divides in Taiwan, even as external threats intensify. A failure to pass the legislation, Lai and other government officials warn, could weaken Taipei's security posture and increase the risk of Beijing attempting more aggressive actions in the future. Well, this has been the Flash News. Thank you for watching and do have a great day.